Hello and welcome to the Energy Detox, coming to you today from outside of a BP gas station here in Western Pennsylvania. And if you're wondering why I, your host, Joe Sinnott, chose today's location, well, it comes down to three recent headlines. The first headline is related to BP's CEO, or former CEO, Bernard Looney, who stepped down last week following the revelation that he did not reveal some relationships that he had, or the extent of certain relationships he had with fellow BP employees. The second headline that drove me here this morning to this gas station is that gas prices are high. In fact, right now, it's the highest that gas prices have been throughout the United States in the year 2023, and it's actually some of the highest they've been for this time of the year. That, of course, being pre-fall, following the heavy driving season of summer. So it's rare to see gas prices continuing to climb, and it's rare to see gas prices as high as they are right now. And the third recent set of headlines that have driven me here today is related to the state that I grew up in, New Jersey, which recently became the only state in America where it is completely against the law to pump your own gas. Now, lest there be any confusion, it has sort of been that way for a while, but Oregon has had some pockets of that state where it was against the law to pump gas, to have self-serve fueling stations, but following the stroke of the governor's pen recently, now full-service gas stations are not required anywhere in the state of Oregon, and New Jersey stands alone as the only full-service state. And so, taking those three recent headlines, I thought, you know what, today on the Energy Detox, let's weave those together and come up with some questions that you can ask as a leader to identify the hidden costs of self-service leadership fueling. And again, it's important to note that I'm coming to you from Western Pennsylvania, because here in Pennsylvania we have some of the biggest hidden costs of self-serve fueling. Because across the border in New Jersey, gas prices are lower. You might think, again, with full service, they should be higher, but no. Here in Pennsylvania, we have lots of hidden costs. In fact, at over 60 cents per gallon, Pennsylvania is the third highest state when it comes to fuel taxes. So again, what better location, what better place than here in Pennsylvania and here at a BP station to talk about the hidden costs of self-serve gas stations, and more figuratively of self-serve leadership development. And so today, the approach we're going to take is to talk about four different levels of self-serve leadership. And we're going to talk about them in increasing order of their subtlety, those hidden costs. And we're going to start with something I don't see all that much overtly, but definitely has some hidden costs. And those are leaders who give the appearance of seeking to be better leaders and to grow and develop, but are actually either one, unwittingly ignoring any sort of resources or fuel that can help them be better leaders, or two, unwittingly giving the impression to their audience, to their stakeholders, to their employees, that this individual really doesn't need any help, even if he or she is out there talking a big game about growth and development. Now again, I say that because I don't see this too often blatantly, because in 2023, who's going to go out there and say, I know it all, right? I've been around for 30 years like Bernard Looney, and I really don't need any help. You just listen to me, I'm going to tell you what you need to do, and we're good. We're going to be able to sustain momentum. Obviously, there's no leaders out there that are doing that, or at least vocalizing that. But where this really comes into play is leaders who allow themselves to be seen either one as the object of a cult of personality, where people again are dismissive of any sort of humility or any sort of words that come out of that leader's mouth that suggest that again he or she don't really know anything. Those leaders tend to focus heavily on mentorship, which is great. But keep in mind, mentorship is largely a pushing down of best practices and how to get things done, not challenging the status quo, not asking questions, which kind of moves into what true leadership should be, if not coaching, right? Letting your stakeholders know, especially, again, at a company like BP where you have tens of thousands of employees, that you don't have all the answers. You want people to continually challenge you. But again, what happens is, and very often this is done unconsciously, is that leaders allow themselves to be in a position where, again, their stakeholders aren't questioning them. And so the question for you today is, in what ways are you allowing that to happen within your organization? In what ways Are you actually a closed off leader who might be standing with your hand on the pump, if you will, making it seem like you're filling your vehicle, but everybody's rushing to say, well, again, you don't need to be doing that. Why is he or she doing that? That doesn't make any sense. They don't need that. Even though you might know you need it, even though I as a coach certainly know that, yeah, any resource can be helpful. Any extra tool that you have in your pocket can be helpful. But it's up to you to hammer home the message that, no, you need that support. And even if it looks like your tank is full, it's not going to stay full for long. So that's on you to ask that question. The second area that I see where self-serve leadership fueling, if you will, has some hidden costs is when leaders really are all in on leadership development and growth. And you might be one of those people that ingest all kinds of leadership books and blogs and podcasts, or goes to seminars or webinars or sits on panels. You might have joined some third-party groups to have different cohorts, if you will. You're all in on leadership. You talk about it all the time. People listen to you. They see how excited you are. And maybe some of that translates into results. And that's all good, of course. But what are we talking about today? We're talking about the hidden costs. And those hidden costs often, especially if you are a leader who is busy, and again, if you're in oil and gas, I'm going to assume you're pretty busy. Those hidden costs are, of course, the time and the energy that you're investing as it relates to the results that you're generating. Because if you and a leader, as you are spending all kinds of time, again, filling your own tank, while that is good, if you can't quantify how much time that is, and whether or not some of that time might be better spent on other activities, maybe it's, again, helping fuel the tanks of others instead of just ingesting it yourself. Well, again, if you can't answer that question, I challenge you today to stop this podcast, stop listening, stop watching, and try to answer that question. Quantify it. Again, especially if you're in that position where you're doing all of the things that I would hope you would want to do, and that is to better yourself, again, to fuel yourself. But if you can't identify the hidden costs there, the hidden tax, if you will, that is directly or indirectly impacting your stakeholders, then your approach might not be as effective or sustainable as you'd like it to be. The third way in which I see hidden costs of self-serve leadership is when companies invest all kinds of money and time and energy on internal resources. And of course, companies like BP have large learning and development teams, right? Lots of people, lots of resources, lots of money spent on growing and developing their talent at every level of the organization. And that's a good thing. Clearly, again, we're not knocking any approach, any attempts to fuel your own tank, if you will. And companies that do it internally, in many cases, do a pretty good job of it. But what are the hidden costs? Well, the number one hidden cost that I see as an independent coach that works with lots of different companies in the oil and gas industry is that lack of independence, is that lack of third-party perspective. And that doesn't mean that they don't bring in third-party experts and resources, of course, but when you have a large learning and development team, it's sort of human nature, if you will, that you're going to start to establish your own culture, if you will, right? Your own norms, your own rules. And once that starts to happen, you stop challenging some of the existing norms and rules. And again, I turn things back to BP, where a lot of the coverage following Bernard Looney's departure is around the fact that, BP has a unique culture, and perhaps things weren't being challenged as much as they could have been. And sometimes, as internal learning and development teams grow bigger and bigger, the question is, what is it costing you if you don't have an appropriate level of independence to poke and prod and challenge? If instead everything seems like, hey, you're investing that time, you're investing that energy, and you're investing that money, we're in a good spot here. We're checking a box. We might be checking multiple boxes. But the question for you and your organization is, are you seeing signs of a lack of independence when it comes to your growth and development? Are you seeing enough challenging from the outside, or at least using outside tools and resources to make sure that you're not growing complacent and you're not, again, incurring extra costs that you might not need to incur as you self-serve, self-fuel your organization? And the fourth now and final, and I would say the most subtle of all of these examples of hidden costs of self-serve leadership is when you are heavily employing external resources, external leadership development resources to fuel your organization. Because clearly, if you have external resources, you might argue that by design, they're not self-serve, right? If you're paying a third party to come in and challenge and ask questions, or to at least infuse your organization and your leaders with new thoughts, new ways of doing things, of trends that are occurring, maybe even outside your industry, clearly that sounds like a good thing. And again, you're checking now all the boxes, right? How could you possibly be complacent when you're signed up for all of these items? Well, I'll tell you how, and I'll tell you where the hidden cost comes in, and I'll tell you why it might not be as full serve as it might appear. And that's because many of those resources get you real close to the goal line. They give you all the tools you need, all the plays you need to run. But then when you need it most, they're not there. And leaders, again, might have a false sense of security that they are well armed to do these things, but in the heat of the moment, again, when they need to push the ball across the goal line, they're not able to tap into those resources as effectively. So all that being said, those are the 4 items here. I'm being told to hang up my phone here and move on from the gas station attendant via the pump, which is pretty cool. So I'm going to sign off here and make one final note, and that is, if you're interested in exploring how any of these resources, again, can be improved and how you can reduce those hidden costs, or how, again, you can value the different octanes, if you will, of the fuel that you're putting in your vehicle, if you will, your company vehicle, your figurative vehicle, then reach out, ask questions, and we're going to hang up now. So with that, hope you have a great rest of the day, and thanks again.